Okay, today we will be learning one of the most important topic that is antigen antibody reactions and its clinical utility. I think the day before yesterday you had learned about the concept of antigen individually as well as antibody. So it is very important to know these two factors which will be important for diagnosing the diseases, various diseases which we cannot able to cultivate or detect in the lab, on the artificial media. So these are the important reactions which will tell you right now which disease is present or the person has suffered from that disease, either the current infection or the past infection. When I'm saying current infection, it means that we generally detect the IgM antibodies. And when I'm referring as a past infection, recent past or very past, it means that we are detecting the IgG antibodies. So the most important antibody which we are supposed to detect from suspected cases of various diseases is the IgM. We should give preference to IgM. Otherwise, if we don't have IgM test for that particular disease, we can also detect the IgG, and we can come to a conclusion that it could be a recent past or very past infection. So anti-antibody reactions are also called as the serological reactions. So today's objectives of the topics are to know the principles of serological reactions or the tests, various technical aspects of serological reactions, what are the different applications or clinical uses of these reactions or tests, and which serological test is useful for which disease. The serological reactions are classified as a primary serological test, secondary serological test, and tertiary. The examples of primary serological tests are enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, which you have all heard about it. The second one is the immunofluorescence antibody technique, then radioimmunoassay. This we will be learning in the next few slides. The secondary serological reactions include agglutination test, precipitation test, serum neutralization test, complement fixation test, and then finally the tertiary serological tests are those tests which determine the protective value of anti-sera in the animals. So if we define the antigen antibody reacts in the observable combination, there has to be the optimal number of antigen and antibodies to have that reactions. And these are important in vivo as well as in vitro. When I'm saying in vivo, it means that it is inside the host. When I'm referring it as a in vitro, it means that we detect these antibodies in the laboratory. So in how they help in the in vivo, they form a basis of antibody mediated immunity in infectious diseases or tissue injury in hypersensitivity and autoimmune diseases. You will be learning these two concepts in coming lectures. While in vitro, it helps in the diagnosis of infections. If you remember the fifth postulate, which has not been stated by Robert Koch, but later it was added by various microbiologists, that if an organism or virus cannot be detected in the laboratory or cultivate in the laboratory artificial media, you can detect the antibodies. So the fifth postulate is helpful to detect the various or diagnosis of various infections. It also helps in epidemiological surveys. Epidemiological surveys are generally carried out in which part of the country or area that disease is predominantly present. So it will help you to know the pattern of the disease in the entire country or in the entire world. Then, of course, it is also useful in the identification of infectious agents and identification of non-infectious agents like enzymes. These are also detected by the help of serological reactions. So the antigen antibody reactions in vitro are called as serological reactions. So the one which we are performing in the laboratory are called as serological reactions. What are the general features of antigen antibody reactions? The reaction is specific. It means that if a particular antigen introduced into a body, your body or host's immune response will produce the antibodies which are specific to that particular antigen. And that antigen has a specific determinant on that surface of that antigen, which is also called as epitope. And that epitope will generate the antibody response. Of course, there are non-specific antibodies which are present in our body because of the subclinical infections and apparent infections which we have studied in the infection chapter. But they are not fulfill the total neutralization or destruction of those infectious agent or the antigen. It cannot neutralize the entire load of that antigen in the human host. So you need to have the specific antibodies which will be useful in neutralizing that antigen. So reactions are always specific. The entire molecule reacts and not the fragment. There will be no denaturation of antigen or of antigen antibody during reaction. Combination occurs at the surface. This is very important because, as I told you, that the epitopes are present on the surface of the antigen, and the combination is firm. This antigen antibody reaction is firm but can be reversible. Both the antigen and antibody combine in varying proportion. Antigens are of multivariate and antibodies are monovalent or bivalent. This is very important. Now, there are certain terminologies which we'll be learning in this chapter, such as affinity. What is affinity? Affinity is the intensity of attraction between antigen and antibody molecules. When we will have this affinity? When there is a specificity between the antigen and antibody. A specific antibody will react with the specific antigen. This is also called as affinity. Only affinity is sufficient? No. There has to be avidity also. What is that avidity? Avidity is nothing but the strength of bond after the antigen antibody complexes are formed. This is very important. So affinity as well as avidity are very important in the antigen antibody reactions. Now, what is the sensitivity and specificity? These are the two words which we often use in the serological reactions. What is the sensitivity and specificity of that particular test to detect that particular disease or the infectious agent or the antibodies for that infectious agent? So how do you define the sensitivity? It is an ability of a test to detect very small amount of a substance. It should detect the minute amount of that antigen. This is our substance, whatever. It is called as sensitivity. What is the specificity? The ability of a test to give positive result if patient has the disease. Otherwise, if the test is highly sensitive, you will get false positive reactions also. To avoid those false positive reactions, we need to have a specificity of that test to detect that particular infectious agent which is there in that patient body or host. So there are no false negative results if the test is highly specific. This is the structure which has been shown to you in the last lecture about the antibody, which looks like Y shape. And this is on the left, it is the antigen. Either it could be a bacteria or the virus. Those lines, red lines, indicates the antigens in the virus as well as the bacteria. And if you look at the structure of antibody, there are two chains, okay? Heavy chain and the light chain. The light chain and the upper part of that light chain, which has got a variable size, is responsible for the antigen binding. So when you look at the antigen, it is a multivariant. It means that there are lots of valencies on the antigen surface where the antibody can bind. So one antigen might have several antibodies bound to that antigen. But when you look at the structure of antibody, it could be a one-sided binding, that is monovalent, or it could be both sides. That means both the chains will bind to that antigen. That is why it is called as a bivalent. How these antigen antibody react? you can see here, there are three different reactions which has been shown in this diagram. First is the homologous. If you look at, there are three types of antibodies. One is purple, one is blue, and one is yellow. And if you can see on the antigen structure, that round whatever virus, if consider that it is a virus, you can see there are different epitopes with different colors. So these antibodies will bind to that specific antigen only. Okay. When antigen antibody complex form, when there is a homologous between antigen and antibody. That is homologous. But that means both the antigen and antibody are very specific to each other. What is the second? Partially homologous or cross-reacting. There are certain antibodies which will react with the non-specific way also, because that antibody has some amount of specificity to that particular antigen, but it is not the complete homologous to that antigen. So there will be a cross-reactivity. It means that when you are testing a particular sample of a patient for a particular disease, you might get some amount of antibody titer. It means that there are certain non-specific antibodies which has got the cross-reactivity. And then heterologous, there is no reaction will occur in the heterologous because the antigen and antibodies are very different. Antigen antibody reactions occurs in three stages. One is the primary stage. The initial interaction between antigen and antibody takes place because of the specificity. When it is happening in the body, in the human host, there will be no visible effect. You cannot see that antigen antibody reaction. It is a very rapid reaction. It occurs as soon as antigen is introduced into the body. After a couple of days or a week, antibody will start producing against that antigen by the immune response, and there will be a reaction. These antigen antibody reactions will occur even at the low temperature, and they generally follow the laws of physical chemistry and thermodynamics. And these antibodies can be reversible. In the secondary stage, demonstrable effects produces the end product like precipitation, agglutination. These are called as different serological reactions because of the antigen antibody reactions. It can lead to the lysis of cells. It can be leading to killing of live antigens, neutralization of toxins. It could lead to the complement fixation, immobilization of motile organisms, or the enhancement of phagocytosis. In the tertiary stage, some antigen antibody reactions in vivo lead to neutralization, destruction of injurious agent, tissue damage, which is harmful to the host. Probably you might have heard the cytokine storm in the COVID-19. It could be the overwhelmed reaction by the immune response, which leads to tissue damage. It includes humoral immunity, clinical energy, and the other immunological diseases. How do you measure these antigen antibody reactions? Again, there are certain terms which we should know. Measured in terms of mass, milligram of nitrogen, units, or titer. So what is the titer? Titer is highest dilution of serum. Serum consists of antibodies. So the highest dilution of antibodies, which gives an observable reaction with the corresponding antigen in a particular test. So when you have a serum sample, you dilute that serum sample, you add a fixed amount of antigen, you dilute that serum till you will get the visible reaction. That could be your highest titer, where the antibodies are still reacting with the fixed amount of antigen. The moment you dilute more, there will be no visible reaction. So this is called as the cutoff value or the titer of that test. Again, here also, sensitivity and specificity is defined as ability of a test to identify correctly all those who have the disease. That is the true positive. And specificity, ability of a test to identify correctly all those who does not have the disease. That is the true negative. This is the, again, second definition of sensitivity and specificity. So in general, sensitivity and specificity of a test are in a reverse proportion. You will not get a test which will be 100% sensitive and 100% specificity. There will be some amount of difference between the sensitivity and specificity. These are the important serological reactions which we will be studying today. Precipitation reaction, agglutination reaction. These are the two main reactions which we will be studying in detail, and then followed by complement fixation test, radioimmunoassay, which we generally do it in the routine laboratory. It is done at the research laboratory. ELISA, of course, it is done in the even in the smallest laboratory. Immunofluorescence again done in the research laboratory. Western blot is done in the medium types of laboratory where ELISA is, ELISA is available, and you want to confirm that, you can confirm with the Western blot. Generally, it is done for the, mainly it was done for the HIV. Now you can do Western blot testing for various antigens also. Now we'll starting with the one of the important reaction, that is the precipitation reaction. How do you define the precipitation reaction? This is very important. When a soluble antigen combines with its corresponding antibody in the presence of electrolytes, suitable temperature, and pH, the antigen antibody complexes are formed which are insoluble precipitate. They will precipitate. If instead of sedimenting, the precipitate remains suspended, then that reaction is called as flocculation. So there are two definitions here in this slide. One is for the precipitation. What is the precipitation reaction? When soluble antigen combines with its corresponding antibody in the presence of electrolytes, suitable temperature, pH, and forms antigen-antibody complex, which is precipitated. This is called as precipitation action. And what is the flocculation reaction? This precipitate, instead of sedimenting, it will remain suspended in the suspension, and that is why it is called as flocculation. So precipitation is again the flocculation is the type of precipitation reaction, but instead of getting sedimented, it remains suspended. What are the different mediums which we use for demonstrating these reactions? The liquids or gels like agar, agarose, and polyacrylamide. Before going to learn the actual precipitation and agglutination reaction, we must know the concept of zone phenomenon. What is the zone phenomenon? You can see here, there are three diagrams, and you can see there are a representation. The red dot consists represents the antigen, and the little bigger in the what you can say oval shape is antibody. Just to understand the concept of antigen antibody. You can see in the first reaction to the left, antibodies are excess. Antibodies are in the excess. Antigens are less. So one antigen are binding with the many antibodies. The reaction will take place, but it will not be visible. The second, you can see antigens are excess and antibodies are less. So reaction will still occur, but it will not be visible. So when antigen will be excess? In the first phase of the disease. If you try to detect the antigen-antibody reaction in the first phase of the disease, you may not get the exact result which you are expecting. That is antigen-antibody complexes. You will not get, because antigen is in more number than the antibody. And in the post zone, antibodies are more. Now disease had occurred and you have ample amount of antibodies, but there is no antigen. Antigen is neutralized already. So you will get the post zone phenomena. What is in the pre-zone phenomena? Antigen is access. And what is the post-zone phenomena? Antibodies access. So what do you need to have the zone of, equilibrium? When you will have the antigen-antibody in the proportionate to form the zone of equivalence. And this is called as lattice formation also. So this is very important, which gives you the correct diagnosis of that disease by forming the proportionate level of antigen-antibody reactions. What is the mechanism of precipitation reaction? Marak, who had given this concept of lattice hypothesis, which we have studied in the previous slide. When antigen and antibody must be in the proportionate, so that the antigen-antibody complex will be formed. What are the different applications of precipitation reaction? It can be used as a qualitative or quantitative test. When I'm saying qualitative, it means that it is giving you answer in the one word, yes or no, positive or negative, reactive or non-reactive. But when I'm using the quantitative, yes, positive, reactive, but how much? I want to detect the titer, how much titer of antibody is present in that patient body, which will neutralize the fixed amount of antigen. That is called as quantitative test. So qualitative test will useful for screening. Yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. Positive, negative, reactive, non-reactive. But if it is present, we must perform the quantitative test, which will tell you the exact number of antibody, number of titer, which will tell you whether it is true titer or it is a false titer, whether it is a significant titer or the insignificant titer. It has to be done when you get the qualitative test positive. These precipitation reactions are very sensitive to detection the antigen test, antigens. So you remember this is one of the MCQ also. Precipitation reactions are very sensitive to detect the antigen. It can detect as little as 1 microgram of antigen or protein. So these are the very important application in detecting the minute amount of antigen by the precipitation reaction. So that is why their importance is in the forensic application, like identification of blood, seminal stains. Whenever there is a crime happening, the people collect the blood spots or semen spots, whatever they want to prove the crime. So they take this and they perform the precipitation reaction and they detect the minute amount of antigen by which they will come to know whether it was present or not. So precipitation reactions are very important in detecting the antigen. What are the different applications in the diagnostic bacteriology? Ring test, slide test, and tube test. What is ring test? Ring test is done in the tube where a ring is formed, which is useful for detecting the streptococci and pneumococci, C-reactive protein. It can also be used for detection of anthrax and food adulteration. That this is a very important application by precipitation reaction with the help of ring test. And what is the slide test? It is useful for diagnosis of syphilis. Syphilis is one of the sexually transmitted disease which is caused by Treponema pallidum, which is done by the slide test. And the same slide test can be done with the tube test also, and it is called as Kahan test. When we are doing it in the slide test, I'll show you in the today's practical at 11 o'clock that VDL tile, which we have in our college, which is useful for slide test. That is also called as VDRL test for diagnosis of syphilis. And tube test, once you get the slide test positive, you can do the tube test to know that significant titer again. And that is called as Kahan test for syphilis. And of course, standardization of toxins and toxoids. So these are the different uses of precipitation reaction. When we are doing the precipitation reaction in gel, it is called as immunodiffusion. So what is the definition of immunodiffusion? When an antibody and its antigens are placed in an agar gel, they diffuse towards each other and form an opaque band of precipitation at the junction of their diffusion front. So whenever we are using, we are trying to find out the antigen-antibody specificity, we put it on the agar gel. Because of the hygroscopic nature or the applying the current, the antigen and antibody pass towards each other and they form a line of precipitate. This is called as immunodiffusion. Now there are different types of immunodiffusion tests. You can see there are two tubes now. Your left, even my left, single diffusion, which is also called as Odin procedure. Now, what is single diffusion? You can see on the top, antigen is loaded and entire tube is having the antibody agarose gel. So the slanting lines are denoting the antibody in a agar gel. So this is the agar gel. On that agar gel, we are loading the antigen. That antigen will percolate down, and wherever the antigen antibody will come into excess in a proportion, they will form a line of precipitate. That magenta color line is there, precipitating band. That is the single diffusion. And how the double diffusion? The antigen is from the top and antibody is at the bottom, and they again pass with each other with the electromagnetic current or the hygroscopic nature of that agarose gel, and they form a line of precipitate in the middle, and this is called as double diffusion. Why double diffusion? Antigen is also diffusing and antibody is also diffusing towards each other and forming a line of precipitate. Now here a single diffusion in 2 dimensions. It can be done in a Petri plate or it can be done on a slide. On a slide or a Petri plate, you put a agar gel. This is a semi-solid agar gel which is poured onto the slide or onto the culture plate, and then you can make some wells. Those wells you can prepare and then put the antigen in that well, and the agarose will consist of antibody. So the antigen will start percolating and it will form a line of precipitate wherever they are meeting the antibodies. So this is the single diffusion in 2 dimensions. Now double diffusion in 2 dimensions. Now you can see here there are 3 diagrams which I'll be showing one after another. You see the difference now. In the top well, there is an antiserum in well. Antiserum means there are antibodies. And in the bottom 2, there are 2 different antigens, antigen 1 and antigen 2. Now I want to know the antigen 1 and antigen 2 are similar or can react with the antiserum. If they are dissimilar, they will form a cross-shaped precipitation line. Why cross-shaped precipitation line? Those antigens are different from each other. Okay, that is why they form a line of precipitate, but there will be no, there will be a crossover. So the antigen 1 and antigen 2 are different, but they will bind to that antiserum which has got a specific antibodies. But these antigens are different. That is why you will get the cross line. Now here you can see part of one antigen is 90 or 80% similar to the part of other antigen. That's why you will get a Y-shaped precipitation line. Okay, this means that antigen 1 or antigen 2 are similar to certain extent. They're not totally dissimilar. They're similar to some extent, and that is why you will get the line of precipitate in the form of Y shape. Now look at here. There is a complete homology. There is a complete homology between antigen 1 and antigen 2. That's why they form a line of precipitate which is not crossing each other. Instead, they are forming a V-shaped band. It means that antigen 1 and antigen 2 are similar and they can react the antisera. That means the antibody which is present in the antisera. This is called as double diffusion in 2 dimensions. This is the test which also performed for Corynebacterium diphtheria as a Ilex gel precipitation test. So you remember this double diffusion in 2 dimensions. This is the test which we will be performing to find out whether Corynebacterium diphtheria is producing toxin or non-toxigenic strains. Immunoelectrophoresis. When I'm saying gel, when you are passing a current, electric current, then you will be getting the line of precipitate. So on the first slide, there is a trough which is on the agar, and then at the bottom side there is a well. Okay, and then agar. Next, you just place the antigen onto the well, into the well, and then there will be a passing of current, and that antigen will be spread throughout the agarose gel on the slide. Now, what you do in the next, you add the antibodies onto the trough. So the antibody will start percolating down, and they will form a line of precipitate, and you will see these arc. This is precipitation band from where antibody and antigen meet at optimum temperature and at optimal proportion. This is immunoelectrophoresis. This is rocket immunoelectrophoresis or rocket electrophoresis. Why it is called as rocket? If you look at the different arc form, it looks like a rocket. So at the x-axis, you can see there are small wells which has got the antigen, and on the y-axis, you will be getting an arc that is looking like a rocket. That is why it is called as rocket electrophoresis. One-dimensional single electroimmunodiffusion. Okay, these are the different types of precipitation reaction which are carried out in the gel. Okay, now this is counter immunoelectrophoresis. Now look at this slide. On one side there is an antigen, on another side there is antibody. We have seen it. This is in the double diffusion, double direction in the tube. Now we are doing it in the slide by passing the current. So the antibody will move according to their electric charge, and they will form a line of precipitate in the center wherever they meet. This is called as counter immunoelectrophoresis or one-dimensional double electroimmunodiffusion. These were all the precipitation reaction: simple, ring test, slide test, and tube test. In ring test, there are 4-5 tests. Slide test, there is a Vidal test, and tube test, there is a Kahn test. Okay. After that, we have seen the immunodiffusion in the gel. Okay. And now what we are saying is the agglutination reaction. In precipitation reaction, one thing you should remember: the antigen was soluble. Now here in the agglutination reaction, you will come to know antigen is a particulate. That means insoluble. When a particular antigen or an antigen present on the surface of the cell or an inorganic particle is mixed with its corresponding antibody, again in the presence of same electrolyte, suitable temperature and pH, they form the clumps or agglutinates. Okay, probably you have done the blood group test in your first year. You have seen the agglutination reaction. Blood grouping is the best example of the slide agglutination reaction. Only thing you need to remember here is antigen is particulate, insoluble. In the precipitation, antigen is soluble. Okay. Now different applications of agglutination reaction. Again here also slide agglutination, which is useful for identification of various cultures like Salmonella, Bordetella, etc. It can be used for typing of pneumococci and streptococci. These are the examples of slide agglutination. And of course, blood grouping can also be performed with the slide agglutination test. Now, what are the tube agglutination tests? These are very important in the serological reactions, which we will be performing in the laboratory. Serological diagnosis of enteric fever, and the test is Vidal test. Brucellosis, the test is brucellosis. Typhus fever, the test is the Well-Felix test. Typhus fever is caused by rickettsia. So typhus fever it is, and the test is Well-Felix. For typhoid or enteric fever, it is Vidal test. For brucellosis, it is Brucella test, and for typhus fever, it is the Well-Felix test. Of course, blood grouping can also be done with the slide as well as tube, and Koop's test, which is also an example of the tube agglutination test. The agglutination test can be modified as a latex agglutination test by coating some organisms or particles with the antibodies or antigens based upon your interest. You can see here there are 3 circles on the top which represent latex particles which are coated with the antibodies Y shape, and there will be antigen coated latex particle, and then you add, there will be a reaction and there will be formation of antigen antibody reactions. So this is called as latex agglutination test. Examples are ASO test, anti-streptolysin O, or C-reactive protein, or rheumatoid arthritis test. These are the 3 different tests which comes under the latex agglutination test. It is also called as passive agglutination test, and the example is Rose-Waller test in rheumatoid arthritis. The passive agglutination, why it is called as passive agglutination test? The precipitation reaction can be converted to agglutination reaction by coating soluble antigen on the surface of carrier particles such as red blood cells, latex particles, bentonite particles, or gelatin particles. What is the usefulness of this passive agglutination? It will be more sensitive for detection of the antibodies. So agglutination reactions are more sensitive to detect the antibodies than the antigen. Why? Now with the help of passive agglutination, what we are doing, the soluble antigen we are coating onto some particles, and then we are detecting the antibodies. So that will be increasing the sensitivity of the test, okay, to detect the antibodies. What are the different examples of the passive agglutination test? RA test, latex test, or Treponema pallidum heme agglutination test. This is the TPHA test, which is useful for diagnosis of confirmation of syphilis, which is again a sexually transmitted disease. So we have to do TPHA once you will get the viral test positive. Now complement fixation test. There are direct complement fixation test or indirect complement fixation test. Now you can see in the first, complement is there. Okay, that will react to the antigen antibody reaction and there will be lysis. It's a direct complement fixation test. What is happening? Complement will get activated when antigen antibody reactions are there, and it will proceed or it will help to lyse that antigen or the bacteria. Okay, and then indirect, what we are doing, antigen first we are mixing with the antibodies, and then same time we are also adding the complement. So the complement will bind to the antibody. It will not bind to the antigen. It will bind to the antibody here, and they'll form the antibody. The complement will be utilized by the antibodies. Okay, and then you can add coated or indicator system, which are coated antibodies to the to detect that antigen, and there will be no lysis. In the first test, there will be lysis. It means that the antibodies were present. In the second, if lysis occurs, that means the antibodies are not present. If lysis does not occur, it means that antibodies were present because the antibodies are already utilized by the complement previously. Okay, and that is why we will not get any lysis in this reaction. Okay, this is the coagglutinin reaction. Again, same principle. The here example has been given the Covan strains of Staphylococcus aureus, which are having the coated with the antigen, which will be in reacting with the corresponding antibodies, and there will be a reaction of antigen antibody. So this is called as coagglutinin reaction. Okay, this is the ELISA test, enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. Now you can see there are 3 rows of wells. Okay, first is the sandwich ELISA, second one is the indirect ELISA, and third one is the competitive ELISA. And to your right, you can see there are different indicator system. What we have indicated in these reactions, triangular with the red color is antigen, then antibody is there, color product a circle in the cross, and then conjugate different types of color, and conjugate antibody to antigen. Again, it is a different shape. Okay, so you can see, I'll explain you the indirect ELISA test in the middle. You can see the wells are coated with the antigen. Now, what is the coating? It's simply you can prepare the solution of antigen in the skimmed milk, and I will show you the ELISA plate today in the college when I reach the college at 11 o'clock, when we'll be discussing these again tests in the detail in the practical discussion. So the ELISA plates has the wells, microtiter plates, and those plates are coated with the antigen. And how you prepare the antigen? You prepare the antigen concentration in the skimmed milk. Skimmed milk is ज्याच्यातनं साय काढलेली आहे. Okay, and just you flood that skimmed milk prepared antigen into those wells, and just remove that entire. Just throw out the remaining milk quantity, and then what will happen? The antigen will bind to that polystyrene compound of that ELISA plate. Okay. Now, what you need to do? I want to detect the antibodies against that antigen. Antigen, I know it is a particular from a particular pathogen. Say, for example, from HIV. Antigen, I have quoted antigen from HIV. Now, I want to detect the antibody in the patient's sera. So, I have to add the serum sample from that patient, suspected patient. So, what will happen? If the corresponding antibodies are present to that antigen, will bind to that antigen. So there will be a reaction, but this reaction will not be visible to our eyes. So what do we need to do? We have to add amboceptor. And what is the concept of amboceptor? Amboceptor are antibodies. Now, if I have taken the antibodies from human, and if I have injected to the guinea pigs or rabbits, though they are antibodies from my body, will be considered as antigen to the rabbit's body or the guinea pig's host immune response, because that is not belonging to that rabbit or the guinea pig. Though it is an antibody, when I'm injecting into a rabbit or a guinea pig, that will be considered as antigen by that immune response of that host, that is guinea pig and the rabbit. So what will happen then? They will produce the antibody which are against that antibody. So that is why it is called as anti-antibody, or it is called as amboceptor. These anti-antibodies are specific to the human antibody, which we have to detect. Okay, so these anti-antibodies are coated with enzyme and the substrate. Now you see this amboceptor, which are anti-antibody coated with the substrate and enzyme. When already antigen antibody are reacting, this anti-antibody will react to the antibodies which has already reacted to the antigen, and there will be a stability. Because of the stability, the enzyme will start degrading the substrate which is attached to that anti-antibody. So it will form a color compound. So you have to stop that color compound, otherwise the false positive reaction will come. So that color compound, the optical densitivity is detected, and you will come to know whether patient is positive or negative. There has to be a cutoff value. A certain amount of optical density will be considered as positive, and below this will be considered as negative. For example, if you get a OD value of 0.8 or 0.7 or 0.6, or you will get a OD value of 0.001, 0.002, or you will get a OD value of 1.9, 1.8, whatever. There are three types of readings now I have told you. 0.001 is totally negative. It means that there are no antibodies, there was no reaction at all, because the patient does not shown any antibody to that HIV virus antigen, okay, which we had quoted. The second, there was some reaction, there was some optical density. It could be because of the human error. When we are washing these antigen antibody, when there are three different steps in the ELISA, in between we have to wash excess amount of antibodies, excess amount of anti-antibodies, we have to remove it. Otherwise, if they remain there, they will form a false reaction, which is a false. Okay, those are antibodies which were not bound to that antigen, but because we did not wash them out, we want to remove all those which did not bound to that antigen. What will happen? Those antibodies will remain in that well, and we are adding antibodies, and they'll show some amount of reaction. That's why you will get to 1.6, 0.5, 0.8 OD. So this could be gray zone. What is gray zone? Might be, may not be. It could be that what you can say, a mistake by the person who is doing that ELISA, or a patient might be in window period. There are very few antibodies which could be able to detect by that method. Okay, and what is the 1.2, 1.8, 1.2? Definitely the patient is positive because it has got the antibodies. That is why it has been detected by antibody by color production, and that is why it is truly positive. 0.01 negative, 1.2 truly positive, and gray zone 0.6, 0.7, 0.8. Okay, 0.5 positive, 0.6, 0.7 for it. So what do we do then? Repeat the sample. Repeat the sample after 1 month or 2 months, and then find out whether the same gray zone phenomenon is coming, or it is coming directly positive or directly negative. If again it is coming gray zone phenomena, then you go for the Western blot test or the polymerase chain reaction, PCR reaction. It could be because the patient might be in the window period. So these are the different. Now, what is the difference between the sandwich ELISA? Now, sandwich ELISA, here we don't code the antigen. Here we code the antibody. And then we add the antigen, and then we add the antibody which are specific to that antigen. So the antigen will be representing as a sandwich between two different antibodies. That is why it is called as sandwich antibodies. And these are very, very sensitive and specific for detection of antigen. Very good test for detecting the antigen, sandwich ELISA. And what is the competitive ELISA? Competition. We compete each other with the known antibody and with the unknown antibody. Unknown antibody from the patient body, known antibody which already you know. So they will compete with each other. So if there is no reaction, it means it is positive. If there is a reaction, it means negative. Okay. This is how you have to remember the competitive ELISA. Why it is reaction? Because your own known antibody will bind first to the antigen and they will neutralize that antigen. So the patient antibody will not react with the antigen. Okay, because already it has been utilized by the known antibodies. So there will be competition between the known and unknown. And if there is no no color, it will be positive. If there will be color, there will be the negative. Now, this is again direct immunofluorescence test. This is very important. These are the tests which we use in the fields to detect the large scale tuberculosis cases in the fields. What we do, we just take a slide and we coat that slide with the antigen, and this antigen is again reacted with the coated antibody. What is coated antibody? It is coated with the fluorescent labeled specific antibodies. So if there is a specificity between that antibody which is coated with the fluorescent dye with the antigen, then there will be a fluorescence. It means it is the direct fluorescence test. You are detecting direct amount of fluorescence, which will be indicating the antigen is present. Now, indirect immunofluorescence, what we are doing here, the slide is coated with the known antigen. Now, patient serum has got the antibody. They will bind to that known antigen, and there will be reaction between antigen and antibody. Now you are adding the fluorescent label antiglobulin. And now you know the antiglobulin. Antiglobulin is what? Antiglobulin is against that antibody. Okay. So now what we are doing, we are directly adding that fluorescent label antiglobulin to this already happened reaction, and there will be a fluorescence. This is called as indirect immunofluorescent test. These are used in the research laboratories. We don't use in the normally in the normal laboratories. Now, radioimmunoassay. These are very important. These are done only in the high containment laboratories because it has associated with the radioimmun activity. Okay. So radioimmunoassay, how we do, you can see here on the top, unlabeled antigen, that means it is taken from the test sample, and then labeled antigen, which is labeled with the radio labeled and isotopes or the labeled radioactive elements, and then we have the specific antigens, okay, against that antibodies, both specific antibodies and specific antigens. Okay, what will happen? See, we mix it, and then those which are coated will bind to the antibodies, and those which are not, they remain outside. So there will be a release of radioactive radio immunoassay. The radioactive element will be released, and that will be quantified. On the basis of that, you can say it is positive or negative. Okay, this is all about the serological reactions, that is the antigen and antibody reactions. And these are the different MCQs which I will share you on the Teams. Let me see how I can share those, or I'll let you know in one of the lecture or discussion. Okay, this is what you need to prepare. 3 LAQs which you have to prepare. Define agglutination reaction and discuss the principal application of agglutination reaction, giving suitable examples. And there are 3 short answer questions. So these are the activity assignments you need to perform today from today's lecture. Okay, this is over from my side. Now we'll be meeting at 11 o'clock. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll be meeting at 11 o'clock. Then there I'll be again discussing these reactions. I'll again repeating all those, and also trying to demonstrate the whatever test which we perform in the lab. It is just a demonstration practical. I'll show you there at 11 o'clock. I think we have done. And okay.
Sir, we'll take screenshot one attendance.
मला घ्यावं लागेल का?
सर मी घेतोय तोपर्यंत.
ओके 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 ओके. अच्छा, तोपर्यंत किती आज कमी होते का? 58 लोक होते. एनिवे, यू स्टॉप रेकॉर्डिंग नाउ आर्या. हे सगळं त्याच्यात येईल.
ओके सर.
Okay, we'll be meeting at 11 o'clock.